Hi everyone, Miss Crystal here. I hope your day is going most excellent. I am working on prepping a project I haven't actually done before that I want to do with some of my students. And I thought, you know what, this is going to be a really fun one. I thought I'd invite you along. So let's get going. We're going to be painting some watercolor feathers today. So first things first, we want to start out with a drawn picture. I have searched the internet, aka Google, and found a variety of feathers that I thought would be not too hard for my students to do. My next step is I need to spray my watercolors and get them moist. So I'm just going to spritz them now. I had already spritzed them earlier, but they've kind of dried out. You just want them moist. I don't want a puddle on there. I want just the top to be moist. This will help you get more color out of your watercolors. So for my feathers, I could choose to outline in Sharpie, but I kind of want to play with it first. My first thing I'm going to do, I think, is a wet into wet technique. So for wet into wet, my first wet is my water. So I'm going to fill up some water here. And something I want to be careful with is I want to leave this center part white. Do I have to do that? No, but I want it to really show up. So I'm going to grab, I would probably have a couple of brushes for this, like a small one and a slightly bigger one. And depending on how comfortable you are painting with a brush, you probably want to have the smaller one for around the edges and the bigger one for filling it in. And keep in mind, a rule of thumb with watercolor is that the watercolor, the paint, will only go where you put the water. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my fan because I don't want this to dry out too much. So I'm going to turn that off. So if you have fans going, it may wash out or dry out your watercolor sooner than you may want it to. So I'm going to be really careful. I always get a little water right there. I want to be careful about those drips. So I'm just taking, and I don't know if you can see it, but wherever you put the water, it's going to be a little bit shiny. And that's what I'm going for. I want a little bit of shine. Now I did accidentally get some water here. I'm not concerned about it because I'm not going to put any paint there. So that'll just dry out and it'll be a-okay. Once again, that extra little water, wipe that off. And my goal is to work quickly enough that my paper is still having a little bit of a puddle on top. I don't want a huge puddle, but I want it to be wet enough that it allows my watercolor to flow and to mix. And so if I don't have enough water, I may have to add some as I go. Oh, that was a close one, people. Now I can take and wipe out my brush and suck up that extra water, but there's still some moisture there. So I want to be really careful about not getting water right there. Okay, so this is looking pretty wet. This side is drying a little bit faster. That's normal, just because it's the first side that I did. And now what I'm going to do, my paint is a little bit more moist, so that's good. And normally my go-to, I like to do my warm colors, my yellow, orange, red, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit and try and do a little cooler colors. I want colors that will look nice together. And I'm just going to dab it. I want it to kind of bleed. I can help it out by adding a little bit more water there. I can outline if I want to. And keep in mind, it's only going to go where I put that water or if I put paint on my brush there. And see how it just kind of bleeds together. That's the watercolor artist term for mixing. I'm just going to add some more. Now, obviously, I'm adding a little bit more water, and that is a-okay. If I want it thinner, I can just spread that around, but I'm kind of feeling I want a little thicker right in here. And you may notice I'm dabbing my brush. Dabbing my brush deposits paint. It leaves it thicker and it makes it kind of nice. So this is my plan with my students. I want them to try a wet into wet technique. I'm going to add some more water here since it's drying out. It is summer right now, and so, you know, everything just dries out a little bit faster. Let's see. I'm going to try maybe a darker blue up here just because I want to. Now, this is bleeding a little bit into my feathers open area. That'll be okay. It'll be fine. So if it accidentally gets water where I didn't plan on it, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to overlap some of my colors here because I think that will be really pretty. And of course I can just spread this out if I want to. I can add other colors if I want to. But I'm liking how this is looking. I think I want to try my other blue, my warm blue. Ooh, that's really nice. Nice crisp line. See that nice darker area right next to the bone of my feather. Now, is that really the name of it? I have no idea. If you know, go ahead and drop a note in the comments. And a lot of people that start out with watercolor actually love the wet into wet look. It's actually a pretty great look if you want to just play with watercolors. I'm going to try some yellow in here. Ooh, look at that. I'm going green, people. And it's just a nice way of mixing colors. You want to think about colors on the color wheel that are next to each other because they will blend really well. And if I'm using like yellow, I don't want to use purple next to it because it tends to get really mucky and brown and or gray. So unless you want brown and gray, then go for it. Try it out. And I might even try, I don't know if this will work, but I'm just going to do some little black dots because I think it's awesome. Because sometimes feathers have little dots on them. I feel like I want a little more blue down here, kind of define some. I didn't really get in this little feathers right here. There we go. And I'm not even minding, I do have a darker on the outside, a darker color, so it kind of defines the edge a little bit. Let's see. Now normally white doesn't show up because it's so transparent, but if I leave it thicker, I wonder what will happen. I'm gonna find out. See if I can get some nice little polka dots going. That's just too wet. Let me see if I can get a little bit thicker. Sometimes if your paint is thicker, it'll sit there and it'll do nice effects. But you may notice for my white especially, I'm rinsing between every time I add it because there's other colors combining on here. And I don't want that to do too much. See, it kind of grays it out. And add a little bit of water, get this really thick. I'm mixing it because I want my paint to be thick. There we go. Okay, so not too bad for my first one. I want to make sure that that center part is looking just so nice. Now, it did bleed a little bit. Your paints can run some, but I'm just going to make it look like I did it on purpose by thinning out this center part here a little bit. So that is wet into wet. It's a lot of fun. Let's see, what do I want to do for my next one? I'm feeling like I remember seeing some feathers that had a variety of stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do the wet this time. I want to play with it a little bit more and show more feathery texture. So let's see if I can remember. I think some of them kind of went down like this. And I'm just going to start by outlining. Now, could I just do all of them wet into it? I sure could. But I want to kind of play with some of the texture. So I'm just coming in here. Now the group that I'm prepping this for, it is a group of 55 elementary students. So that being said, I probably won't take them as in detail with this. I'll show them the wet into wet and I'll tell them, okay, you can have fun with this. Go for it. So I won't be as detailed necessarily as I am with you guys. But I find too, kids just want to have fun and be creative and make their own thing. I always try and teach them something when I'm doing it, but I also want to just let them go for it. So I'm feeling I want a little bit of a shadow here. So I have this dark blue. It's definitely darker than this one and this one. And the difference between them is that one works really great as a shadow color. So if we look at our blues, sorry, there's a little brown mixed in there. Let me clean my brush really well. So that's our light blue. That's nice, but it's not going to add much of a shadow. This is our medium blue. Also very nice, but I want to go for my darkest blue here. It's probably a little bit closer to an ultramarine blue. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit right in here. I'm going to clean off my brush. I got those little dripping. And by using it while it's wet, it's going to just mix and look like a really dark brown. And I can take and just swoop. Now, since it's still wet, this is going to be, it's going to kind of blur a little bit as it dries. If this was dry, I could mix the blue with some brown on the side and then add it. But it would stay a little more precise. There we go. I'm liking that. Let's come over and do this side now. Oh, do you see how I went over my line? What a bummer. But that's okay. I'm not too concerned about it. I can just make it seem like it's on purpose. I will just keep working with it and it'll be okay. Now my paint is getting a little dry. I'm just adding a little more water and then see how I'm mixing it. That's going to loosen my paint up. Now I could also try and make it look lighter on the outside here. See how just adding water makes my paint lighter? It's very nice. I can also make it look a little darker by thickening it up. Now I'm seeing texture here. That texture will mostly go away as it dries just because it's so wet. And you may notice I painted over my pencil lines. I'm not really concerned about making it perfect, honestly. And I'm liking how that one's looking a little bit lighter. So I'm going to rinse my brush, kind of dry it out, and then I can lift some color. But I just wiped out my brush so it's a little bit more light in tone. Now, for my next part, I am going to add some black. Oops. No, it's okay. Just kind of lighten it. It'll be fine. There we go. Going to lift some. I'm going to switch to my bigger brush just because I want to. There we go. Kind of dry it out. I might add a little bit more brown right here. There we go. And then I'm coming in with my shadow blue once again. So just kind of outline it and draw with it. Now, if it turns out too blue looking for you, you can always add a little bit of brown on top and that'll make it blend nicely. Whoops. Got a little confused which color I was going for. Clean that up. That's all right. Add a little more blue. And I'm just taking straight from my palette. I don't want to thin it out. I want it to be pretty pure. It's a dark area. It's a dark color. I want it to be concentrated. My brush is feeling a little dry. I want nice, potent color. There we go. Oops, wrong color. I did it again. That happens sometimes. Going for the blue, Crystal. Going for the blue. There we go. Okay, so before I paint next to it, I want to let it dry because I want my colors to stay pretty pure and not blend like it is here. I actually need to go run an errand, so I am going to do that and come back. Okay, folks, I am back and my paint is nice and dry. So I am going to take and I am going to mix some color. I am liking how this kind of diffused a little bit. If you look, you can see, I can still see the detail, but it diffuses a little bit. It spreads out a little bit. So my next step, actually I think I'll use my bigger brush, oops, as I throw it. I'm going to add some water here. Now I have color in my water. I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to go for super clear anyway. Oops, and I do need to rehydrate. There we go. So I am thinking a brown gray for the next part. So I'm going to take some brown. I'm going to take some black, and black with water turns gray. Now if it's too dark, that's pretty dark, but I never know what it looks like until I try it out on a piece of paper. That is not near as dark as it looks, right? But I may want some more gray, so I'm going to come over here, add some water to it, a little gray, brown, mix that together, see how we are looking, and I'm kind of liking it. Okay, I think I'll do my smaller brush. I'm going to grab some other brushes. While I like my small brush, I'm not loving that it's not super rounded. It's kind of a flat tipped brush. And to get better detail, I always like using a rounded brush. Rounded brush helps you get a nice point when you want it. So on the outside edge, I can use it. And see how nice that is? Now, once I've added this, I can decide, do I want it darker? I may want it darker, but right now I can do kind of a wet into wet. This can be my first wet, and then I can add another one. But maybe I don't want to add another one. I'll just have to decide as I go. Now, do you see how the edge is kind of bleeding? That is totally okay. If you're like, oh, I didn't like that very much, don't worry. Let it dry, and you can just adjust. Now, see how much I touched that edge? It's going to bleed a little bit more. I can purposely make it bleed more if I want to. You may not want to, that's okay. And see how I had touched this darker area, and I'm just stealing some of that paint from that edge, and I'm adding some lines to it. If it's too wide, just, oh, very nice, very nice. I like that. I really do. I like that a lot. Okay, let's keep going. And once again, I'm going to try and define this edge right here. Now, if I want it super crisp on this edge, I can paint over it once it's dry. And I'll decide. I don't know if I really want it super crisp or not. Haven't really decided that yet. I just kind of go with it. There we go. And I'm just going to give myself a little ragged edge. Oh, I like that. I think my students are really going to enjoy this. I still have some work to do. I need to make them a template so that they can follow along and draw their own feathers. Of course, you could also add like any other kind of feather you want. A peacock feather would be really cool. And of course, your lines would probably be a little bit different with that. This one reminds me, it's not exactly like a turkey feather, but it does have some similar colors. Turkey feathers tend to be, I think, the ones that I have are more brown and black. But I'm liking kind of this more brown gray look. I can just take that down there a little bit. Now this is pretty wet. See how blurred that went? Because it was much more wet than this part when I painted it, and that's okay. Try and get that straight line going on there. Boom. Add a little shadow there. Ooh, I love it. You see how I'm doing some gentle circles? This line was pretty dark. By adding, with the moisture I have in the brush, doing some gentle circles, I kind of dig into the paint and it loosens that hard edge. Ooh, I like that. Okay, so I can soften this a little bit if I want to. If I'm like, oh, it's too harsh, no problem, I soften you a little bit. I'm just trying to make a slightly darker color. See how that's a little darker now. This is pretty wet still, so I might come back, add some more detail like I did here, but I don't want to do that quite yet. Or what if I did some polka dots? I know, I got all excited. And since it's so wet, they're just going to blur a little bit. Try not, I did too much of a line there. Try to break up the feeling of having a line just by doing some zigzags here. If it's too dry, add a little water to it. This one's kind of drier. Maybe add some little hairs. I like the little hairs. Maybe add a little darker here, give it a little shadow. I'm just dabbing it to give it a nice little shadow. I'm kind of liking that. Remember, if you want to lift a color, rinse out your brush, kind of pick up. So I've rinsed out my brush, I dry it off. Honestly, I just used my fingers to do that, but you know, be civilized, use the paper towel, and I can lift and brighten some of this if I want to. This is just called lifting. I could also dab with a paper towel, but it may lift more than I want. See how that's pretty bright there? I can blend that out a little bit. Try and get that color back. Okay. And then I might just add a little, I may want to fade this out. If it seems too white, I'm just taking the paint that's around it and kind of fading it a little bit. Because sometimes it's just too bright. I can just kind of re-outline it here. it's starting to dry, so I can add some subtle little details. And it'll fade a little bit, but once again, I can always come back in with it if I want to. I feel like I want it a little bit brighter right here, so I can lighten it, but I can also add a lighter color. So I can come in here, I'm going to thin down a little yellow, and see how that yellow just makes it seem a little bit brighter. I can do it on the edges here to give it a little more warmth of color. I like it. I like my pictures with a little bit of warmth to them. Oh, I like it. Now, if it's too warm, just come back in with a little bit more of your brown mixture. You can also lift it. And I feel like I want it lighter at the tip here. There we go. So with watercolor, you can kind of work back and forth. Do I like it? Does it need something? Do I want to put a little more detail here? Since these are starting to dry out, I can't see the shine of it anymore. I can come in here with a little bit of the same color, and it appears darker because it's another layer. It's a layer on top of a layer. Okay, I'm kind of liking it. I'm liking the lines on here, I have to say. I do like that factor. Okay. So, my next step, I am going to play once again. Ooh, what do I want to do? I could do rubbing alcohol, which would be cool, or I could do salt. Since it will be for 55 kids, I think I'm going to do salt for this one. So I'm going to take my little brush. I'm going to outline first, and then I could always take a bigger brush and fill that in. I went over my line a little bit. Oh, snap, that's okay. I could always do a dark color. I could also let it dry, and then you wouldn't really notice it too much, although my colored water is a little bit darker. And I'm really not looking for perfection here. I'm just really am looking to play. So just kind of fill this in. And technically, I probably could have lightened my pencil lines, and that would have helped to hide if I didn't get my paint exactly where I want it. But you know what? I paint pretty potent color, so I'm just going to go for it. In this one, what do I want to do? I think I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to use some magenta, ooh la la. Still trying to leave this part white. Now I did darken it on here, and I'm liking that a lot. I may do a little bit of darkening on there. Now magenta may not be your first choice. It normally is not my first choice, but I want to try something that I wouldn't normally try. So magenta it is, people. Originally this was going to be a black and white feather. I guess you could do this with leaves too, but this I'm just gently putting just a slight bit of pressure, and then I push down further, and that gives me that wider line. It's a little dry. There we go. Okay. I think I'm going to pull out this warmer blue here. Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. Now, you may say, why are you covering up what you just painted? Mostly because I want to have a little bit of warmth, but I don't want heavy duty magenta. So I'm coming in here with this nice warm blue. It's very similar to like a cobalt blue or something along that lines. Sometimes cobalt, when you look at it, it's a lighter blue, and sometimes when you look at it, it's a bit of a darker blue. It just depends on what brand you're looking at. In this one, ooh, I accidentally switched to my darker blue. That's okay. I'll just add it down here at the bottom. It shall not go to waste. So if you look at this blue, we already tried it out. It's our slightly lighter blue right here. And if you're wondering why this is more faded, this is just a piece of cardstock paper. It's not actually watercolor. So it absorbs differently. My watercolor paper allows my color to sit on top, where this is absorbing a little bit more. And so it gives me a different effect. If I was to watercolor, now I do this kind of paper with my preschool kids and sometimes elementary, and it's one we're not as concerned about a finished product, like an art product. We're more learning science, or we're playing. If I wanted to be more serious about it, I would pull out the watercolor paper, and that's mostly because it doesn't granulate as much as the cardstock paper does. You definitely want a heavy duty paper, because if you did like let's say printer paper would not work very well at all. It would get wet and kind of fall apart, and that is not what I'm wanting for this. So I probably should have done water first, honestly, with this. I mean, I do pretty well at making sure my paint is concentrated. Now I'm switching over to my darker blue. I think I kept doing some darker blue, and that's okay. I want darker here. I do want to keep it pretty wet. I want to see the moisture of it. And whenever you're using paint like this and you're going to use salt, it will lift some of the color. So I could even come in here, and if I want to play a little bit, oh, there's some white. Now I'm not overly mixing it because I want it to stay kind of this whitish look. Now, is this what you want to do with salt? I don't know. I'm just kind of playing, and that's the fun part about watercolor, is just allowing the play. Now, you may notice I did not rinse my brush, and I'm getting color in my white. I'm just going to dab it, take my brush, kind of rinse it, and I can lift that off, and I'm back to white. Should you always clean it up? You should. Do I always? I don't. Okay. So, my next thing I'm going to use, I can use table salt, and I've used table salt for years. Sea salt tends to give you a slightly bigger granulation. So I'm just going to take, and I'm going to sprinkle it on top. You want to make sure it's wet when you do this. If your paint is not wet, it is not going to work. It also works best with darker colors. So if you're doing this on like a yellow or an orange, it's not going to show up very well. I accidentally got green in my yellow. You'd be amazed how often that happens. There we go, clean that up. So I'm just sprinkling a little bit. If I'm concerned that I didn't have enough water, I don't want to brush, because that will actually ruin the effect. I can come in with a little extra water and just dab. Dabbing does not disrupt the salt. It just adds more moisture. If I needed more color, I could dab some more color. And now I'm just going to sprinkle that right there. and we're going to leave that and see what happens. So as I'm seeing what's happening with that, I'm kind of looking at this guy here, and I'm feeling like it needs some more detail, people. But what kind of detail do I want? I think I want to add some feather lines. Now, do you see how I got salt on that? If it's dry, like this is pretty well dry, it's not going to do anything. I can just blow it off, not a big deal. While it's wet, I want to leave it. I don't want to touch it because I want it to do its watercolor magic. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to try first my dark blue. Oh, see, I can see that very nicely. And it's going to be somewhat crisp just because the underpainting is dry. If the underpainting was wet, once again, I would get some more kind of blurred lines instead of a nice crisp line. I want to see what the green looks like with this one. I'm going in with my darker green, and I'm going to see, oh, I like that a lot. Look at that little curviness. Hello, gorgeous. And I'm just using the very tip of my brush here. And I might even come in here with some dark green so it matches a little bit more. Ooh, I like it. You never know until you try it out. Because green is honestly not one of my go-to colors. But for this, I'm really liking it because it already has this lighter green in there. And it's just pulling from that. And I'm liking it because it's feeling a little more like a feather now and a little less like just something I've colored. So I'm going to add some more water to my green. It was looking a little bit dry, and I want a nice layer so I can draw with my brush. Because you know what? Drawing with your brush is just fun. Oh yes, I should probably outline. Just once again using the tip. If I want it to be thicker, I'm going to push down a little bit harder. And see, as I push, it widens if I'm using the tip. Let me try that again. It's super skinny, right? So just come in here. It's a little bit thicker there. Ooh, I like it. And we'll just kind of keep moving and outlining. Now the nice thing is this one's dry, so I'm not concerned about putting my hand on it. If it was wet, I would be more concerned because I don't want to smudge the color. And that can happen. I also want to make sure I'm not getting any water on my hand because when I went over here, it was damp. So I wiped my hand off because if I'm touching this and it's wet, I'm going to be lifting color off, and I don't want to lift my color off. So I will probably give my students, see how that green, I don't want that green on the outside. It'll be okay though. I'll add a little more of that dark blue. That'll cover it up nicely. So I'll probably do step by step how to draw these leaves. I took pictures as I was drawing them, so that'll help. And then I'll make them a little chart and I'll just go from there. So I'm just going to come in with that same dark blue that I had, and I'm just outlining where that green was, and poof, it's gone. It's like magic. Just coming in with that. It's a little too dry. Good. Get some more moisture. Coming in and just defining that area. And that's where watercolor is so nice, because my students, when they see me working, they'll see that my picture is not perfect. And I'm okay with that because I always go back in and redefine my stuff. Because my stuff just isn't perfect until I do that. And I'm not looking for perfection, as I said. See how nice a little outline can go a long ways. It just defines everything. And you could always do Sharpie outlines. Sharpie outlines are so great, especially if you're like, I am not very good with a paintbrush and drawing lines. You could do any of these lines if it's dry with a Sharpie. If it's not dry, guess what? You're going to kill your Sharpie. And you're going to be so sad because you're like, oh, I love my Sharpie and I destroyed it. And that's how we learn. You can somewhat salvage it. And while you're tracing with a Sharpie, every once in a while it might get gunked up. You get a little bit of the watercolor on it. Just take a paper towel and wipe off the ends and you'll be good. Can you see the granulation that's going on there? Now, if I didn't have as much texture going on, you might see it a little bit more. But let's zoom in. Can you see where each bit of salt is and how it's just picking up around that salt and it's creating a nice texture? That is what I'm looking for with my salt. Okay, I'm feeling like I want to show this feather a little bit more. I'm going to take some green and I'm just mixing it with this brown that's already here. I feel like that will make it feel kind of natural. And I just want to come in here and kind of fade out the white. Because usually feathers are not straight up white. I mean, unless it's a white feather. But it's kind of like an off-white. It's creamy. See how that, just toning it down just a little bit, really adds a lot to your painting. And then, of course, since it's wet, it's going to diffuse a little bit. But I can always come back in if I want to and add a little more detail. Okay. So I want to do the same thing with this, but it's still too wet. So at home, what I can do is I can hit it with a hairdryer. Now, I usually don't like to do that when I have my salt because I want it to naturally process. What can happen is it's already kind of done its work. It's still working, but I can hit it with a hairdryer, but underneath the salt is still moisture, okay? So I wouldn't want to try and rub it off at this stage, but I could dry it enough to kind of work with it. But ideally, you're letting it just sit. With my younger students, I say wipe off the salt the next day, but you don't even have to, honestly, if there's huge globs, because sometimes students will just dump their whole salt on there. Don't do that. Don't do that. So I'm going to see what I can do because I don't want to waste my time. Let's see. I'm going to come in here. I still have this blue, brown. I'm going to come in with a little bit of blue. That's a nice thing with watercolor. You can kind of adapt it. I'm liking this kind of, I'm mixing it a little more with the brown. And we can just come in here, kind of fade it. Maybe I'm going to add a little more brown to it. My goal is I'm doing something really light. You can see how see-through that is. And I'm just coming in. I'm going to add a little more water. I don't want too much water because it is still pretty wet. And it's just going to, I don't want it to bleed too much. There we go. Now at this point, my brush is just damp. I don't even really have color in it. I'm just dragging those edges of color. And there we go. I might put even a little bit darker right here on this edge to give it a little definition. And if you're like, oh, it's too blue, that's okay. I can use the brown and kind of mute it. That's what brown does when you mix it. It kind of mutes your color just a little bit. I'm going to lift this. I rinsed my brush, took the moisture out. I'm just trying to lift it. Now, see that magenta coming through? Magenta, you're getting too pinky on me. Just take some of that blue. You can hide that a little bit. I can kind of thin this out. I can add some little hairs in here if I want to. I'm just using the tip of my brush. I don't have to, but I can. Just kind of play with it a little bit. Make it a little more wispy. Maybe add some purple. Yeah, I'm liking the purple. Purple, when it's thick like this, it just seems darker, okay? Now, I don't want to overdo it, but I'm just going to add a little bit more here. because it lost some of its definition. I'm kind of mixing my blue and my purple together. The purple will just take it a little darker. Yeah, I think the kids will like that. Add a little bit more. Now it already kind of is purple because the red in the magenta and the blue, red and blue make purple. So it just kind of blends. A little darker there. Normally I would tell my students, just wait, don't touch it, but I am touching it. I'm not patient. I'm not really digging into a lot of it. I'm just trying to add a little detail, a little feather here and there, a little wisp. And you can tell I'm just using the very tip of my brush. I can take it down a little bit further if I want to include a little bit more. I might add some dark blue in here so it's just little darker lines, because sometimes the dark blue or shadow blue actually makes it seem a little darker. Shocking, I know. Now I'm not adding a lot of water. I did moisturize my brush. I lathered it with paint because I don't want to lift color. If it's too wet, it lifts color, but this way I'm just drawing those lines. Will it blur a little bit? Yes, it will, because it's still wet. It's drying, but it's still wet. So I'm okay with it having a little bit of blur, having a little like, is that, what is going on there? I don't know. I'm going to add a little more darkness right in here so I can see this part. The quill, is that the quill? That might be the quill. In a pen, it's a quill. It's a quill pen. I don't know. The bone of it, whatever it's called, it's starting to look pretty good. So I'm liking it. I'll probably just leave it. And I think this will be a fun project for my students. And I'm interested to see what they're going to make, because they all look so interesting and I get great ideas from them. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you share pictures of your feathers. Have a great day. We'll see you later. Bye.